The first sign that something was wrong came not during the funeral, but an hour after the last guest had left. I was still in my black dress, standing by the kitchen sink, rinsing out Tom's old coffee thermos. He'd always insisted on using the same scratched, dented one, even after I bought him a sleek stainless steel model. He said it didn't keep the warmth. I said he just didn't like change. We never agreed on it, and now I'd give anything to argue with him again. That was when Jason walked in, loosened his tie, and placed a leather folder on the table like it was a briefcase pitch. "We should talk, Mom." I looked up. He hadn't once cried at the service, hadn't even lingered at the casket. Now his voice had that calm, corporate tone he used when explaining earnings to investors. Rachel followed behind, cradling a soy latte like she was in a co-working cafe and not the home she was born in. "It's time we started thinking practically," Jason continued, pulling out documents. "Dad spoke to me a few months ago. He wanted things to be in order, for your sake." "For my sake?" I repeated. My voice was steady, but my grip on the thermos had tightened. Rachel slid onto the chair beside him, her faux sympathetic smile in place. "It's too much for you now, Mom. The orchard, the house, payroll. We're worried about your health. Sunny Hollow Retirement has amazing programs. I toured it last month. It's lovely." I laughed. Just once, dryly. "You two have been here less than 48 hours. Neither of you asked how I've been sleeping, or eating, or coping. And now you're suggesting I abandon the land your father and I spent a lifetime nurturing?" Jason sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "It's not abandoning, Mom. It's transitioning. There's a developer, Gen Harvest, very reputable. They're offering $7.2 million for the land. It's more than fair." My heart stilled. "A developer?" I whispered. "You're selling the orchard?" Jason's expression was businesslike. "Dad said you couldn't maintain it forever. Be honest. You're 68, arthritis, alone. This place will break you." "I baked for 30 years with these hands," I said, lifting them, stiff as they were. "I pruned trees in frost so heavy it broke the branches. This house holds his voice. His shoes are still by the door." "And his signature is here," Jason said, tapping the paper. "He signed this last July. The orchard passes to us. He wanted peace for you." I stared at the signature. Too smooth, too firm. Tom hadn't held a pen straight in his last 3 months. Morphine made sure of that. "This isn't from Harold," I said sharply. "Where is our family lawyer?" Jason leaned back, unbothered. "Dad wanted it quiet, clean. He trusted me, and Rachel." "I find that hard to believe," I said. Rachel's tone sharpened. "Why would we lie, Mom? We want what's best for you. A safe place, new friends, no responsibilities. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "I'll need time," I said. Jason nodded slowly. "Of course, but we're signing with Gen Harvest by Friday." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the empty side Tom used to fill. There was still a faint scent of his aftershave on the pillow. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I came downstairs to the scent of Jason's imported coffee, dark, acidic, the exact kind Tom hated. My cup was cold by the time I noticed the suitcase by the door. Not mine. "We packed some essentials for you," Rachel said brightly. "Thought we could take a drive to Sunny Hollow, just to look." I looked between them. Jason had his coat on already. "You two don't waste time." "Mom," Jason said tightly, "the paperwork is in motion. You can't live here anymore. The developer has plans, timelines. This is my home. It was Dad's home. He left it to us. We're not having this discussion again." I didn't answer. Instead, I said, "I need my meds and my ID." "Of course," Rachel said, relieved. "Take anything personal. We'll ship the rest." Upstairs, I didn't take much. Just what mattered. My pills, my passport, my original deed to 20 acres of the orchard, purchased in my maiden name in 1980. Land that held the only natural water source. Land they didn't know existed. I tucked it into my purse. 20 minutes later, we were driving, past the school I used to volunteer at, the library where I led story hour, the same winding back roads that once carried baskets of apples to market. But this time, the road narrowed. Jason veered off. "Where are we going?" I asked. No answer. He pulled over on a gravel shoulder by an empty field. "This is where you get off," Jason said, not even looking at me. Rachel shifted, suddenly unsure. "Jason?" "She'll contest the will. Make a mess. This is cleaner," he said flatly. "There's a gas station 5 miles up. You have your meds." He opened my door. I stepped out. My shoes hit dirt. They drove off. The dust stung my throat. I looked down at the suitcase. Light, impersonal, like it had been packed by a hotel clerk. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't broken. I was free. And I had something they didn't. The deed. I started walking, not toward the gas station, but toward town. Toward purpose. Every step blistered, but I didn't stop. I passed the orchard fence line and touched the bark of one of our oldest apple trees. My fingers felt the pulse of something alive, something rightfully mine. They thought I was disposable. They'd soon learn otherwise. If you've ever been dismissed after everything you've done, type 1. Let's talk about it. The clerk behind the counter of Miller's Gas and Grocery barely looked up when I walked in, dragging the suitcase my children had packed for me like a polite eviction notice. The overhead fan squeaked with every rotation, pushing the scent of motor oil, burnt coffee, and lemon floor cleaner into the aisles. Everything in the store was familiar, unchanged from 20 years ago. Even the candy rack still had stale bubble gum and dusty Tootsie Rolls near the register. "Mrs. Bennett?" Ray Miller looked up fully this time, blinking in surprise. "You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm just resting," I said, sinking onto the wooden bench just inside the door. "It's been a long morning." He looked at the suitcase, then at my face, his mouth pressed into a line. "Tom?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "I'm real sorry. He was a good man." "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, he was." He paused, then jerked his chin toward the back office. "You want to use the landline?" "I do," I said, gripping the handle of my purse tighter than I needed to. Ray led me past the racks of canned beans and fire starter kits, past the faded bulletin board with dog photos and yard sale flyers, into a narrow office with a rotary phone and a calendar from 2019 still hanging by a single tack. I dialed the number from memory. 3 rings. "Jennings Law," a woman answered crisply. "This is Nora Bennett," I said. "I need to speak with Harold." There was a pause. Then, "Mrs. Bennett, we've been trying to reach you. Your son already presented a will." "I never saw one," I said, voice cold. "And I don't believe my husband signed anything in his final weeks." A click. Harold Jennings's voice came on the line. "Nora, I was hoping you'd call." "They left me on a roadside with a suitcase," I said, a long breath on the other end. "Come in, now." Harold Jennings hadn't changed much in 30 years. Still wore sweater vests, still had that stubborn silver part in his hair, and still kept candy in a ceramic dish on the corner of his desk. He met me at the door of his office like I was family. "You're safe now," he said, motioning me to sit. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I reached into my purse and placed the fireproof envelope on the table. It made a satisfying thunk. "What's this?" he asked. "Original deed," I said. 20 acres. My name, pre-marriage, and it includes water rights. Harold's face changed, like he'd been handed a grenade and the pin was still in. He opened it gently, examining the seal, the signature, the date. This is gold," he said softly. "I thought it was just a safety net when we bought it. Tom called it our just-in-case land. Looks like just in case is now." He looked at me. "Jason and Rachel don't know about this?" I shook my head. "They think I walked away with nothing." "Then they miscalculated," he said, "badly." By that afternoon, Harold had drafted an emergency injunction to freeze any transfer of ownership regarding Hazel Ridge Orchards. A courier hand-delivered it to Gen Harvest, the biotech company Jason had lined up to buy the property. Within hours, Jen Harvest's legal team began to stall. Water rights were essential. No irrigation, no orchard, no deal. And my children had promised them everything. Back at Harold's office, we reviewed Jason's submitted will. It was polished, clean, notarized, out of state. Too clean, Harold muttered. Tom's handwriting was shaky near the end. This is textbook forgery. I can get a handwriting analyst. Do it. I watched Harold shift into legal warrior mode. Efficient, sharp, dangerous in his own quiet way. But it wasn't just the documents that made the room feel charged. It was the betrayal. The way Rachel smiled at me while nudging me toward a retirement home. The way Jason drove me to a dirt lot like I was an unwanted pet. The way I had mothered them, protected them, loved them, and still they plotted, and they thought I'd just vanish. The next morning, Rachel uploaded a new podcast episode. It was called Letting Go of the Past. Growth Begins with Release. I listened to her speak in that breathy, performative tone, preaching wellness and rebirth, while secretly trying to erase her father's legacy for a payout. Sometimes, she said, we have to make hard decisions to protect our peace, even if others don't understand. I turned off the podcast before she could finish her fake tears. Later that evening, Harold called. Jen Harvest is backing off. They're not pulling out yet, but they've gone radio silent. I smiled. That's a start. Oh, and Nora, he added, voice clipped. I dug into Jason's records. He left Argo Securities last year. Not retired. Pushed out. Internal audit. Accused of manipulating reports. No charges, but he was let go. Now he needs a win, I said slowly. He wants to rebuild his reputation, on the orchard. Exactly. The silence lingered between us like storm clouds. What do you want to do next? Harold asked. I want the truth to be public, I said. You're sure? I nodded. They didn't just steal from me. They tried to erase their father. That night, a text came in on the prepaid phone Ray had given me. Rachel, Mom, we didn't know about that land. Can we please just talk? Jason's freaking out. Let's fix this. No apology. Just fear. I didn't reply. The next morning, Jason called Harold directly. Harold put it on speaker without asking. Harold, this is ridiculous. You're being manipulated by a grieving widow. My father's signature was authenticated. It wasn't, Harold cut in. We'll be contesting it formally. I'll sue, Harold chuckled. You already did. You just didn't expect resistance. Jason paused, then changed tactics. Look, let's be reasonable. She's old. She doesn't even live there anymore. That land, Harold interrupted, is critical to any sale, and she owns it entirely. You made a fatal assumption. Silence. Then Jason's voice again, quieter. What does she want? I leaned in, took the phone from Harold and said, to make sure the orchard stays standing and to remind you, some roots run deeper than greed. I hung up. If you've ever been told you're done, and proved otherwise, type 2. Your quiet strength matters. The video was barely 30 seconds long, but it made my stomach twist in a way I hadn't felt since Tom's diagnosis. It arrived in Harold's inbox anonymously, with no subject line, no return address, just a downloadable file named Hazel Ridge Footage, og21.move. He called me right away. Nora, he said, you'd better come see this in person. When I stepped into his office, he didn't greet me, didn't offer tea like he usually did. He just turned his monitor toward me and pressed play. The screen showed the interior of my farmhouse kitchen, months ago. Tom sat at the table, pale, thin, a fleece blanket over his shoulders. Jason stood behind him, pointing at a document. I just need you to sign this, Dad. It's for Mom's retirement fund, Jason said in the video, his tone coaxing. I already have a will with Harold, Tom murmured, his voice weak but clear. Just in case, Dad, Jason replied quickly. You don't want Mom burdened with all the legal stuff, right? This just makes things easier. Then Tom, confused, half-medicated, picked up a pen. His hand trembled. The screen paused there. My throat dried out. That's the signature they submitted, isn't it? Harold nodded grimly. And that's not all. Look at the upper right corner. I squinted. A tiny blinking red dot. A camera, hidden, recording. She filmed him, I whispered. Rachel filmed her dying father signing something he didn't understand. Harold leaned back and passed it off as legitimate consent. I stared at the screen as a dull ache formed behind my eyes. My own daughter, filming her father while he was barely lucid, not to preserve his memory, but to build legal cover. Later that day, I sat alone in the apartment above the bakery, looking out at Main Street. Children rode bikes. Someone walked a beagle past the library. From my balcony, it all looked so normal. But underneath it all, the roots were rotting. Rachel had turned grief into content. She was still posting influencer videos on healing through detachment, while secretly trying to erase the man who raised her. Jason was likely scrambling to find a way to spin this collapse into an unfortunate legal miscommunication. And me? I was done being quiet. Harold forwarded the video file to Jen Harvest's legal team. It didn't take long for panic to set in. By 4 p.m., a company lawyer named Diane Leeds called Harold, her voice tight and clipped. "We were not informed of any contested estate issues or outstanding ownership claims," she said. "You were misled," Harold replied. "The property is incomplete, and you may be party to coerced consent if you proceed." There was silence. Then, "We'll need to halt movement, temporarily." That was their version of "we're scared." That night I received a second message, this time from a blocked number. "You've made your point. Don't push this further. Let the orchard go." No name, no threats, just pressure, carefully worded. I showed it to Harold the next morning. "They're rattled," he said. "You've turned the ground under their feet unstable. Now they're trying to spook you. Do you think it's Jason?" "I think someone at Jen Harvest is trying to contain fallout." The next move came fast. 2 days later, Jen Harvest's PR team released a statement online. Due to ongoing title clarifications and a desire to uphold ethical acquisition practices, Jen Harvest will pause all further development at Hazel Ridge pending internal review. But that wasn't the only headline. The local paper ran a feature titled, "Widow Fights to Save Orchard Amid Allegations of Inheritance Fraud." They included my photo, a quote, "You don't get to bury someone, then bury their legacy too." I didn't ask for fame. I only wanted truth. But now the world was watching, and Jason hated nothing more than losing in public. That afternoon, I walked into Hazel Ridge Library, where I used to read books to third graders during harvest season. One of the staff, Miranda, waved. "I saw the article," she whispered. "You're braver than most people I know." I smiled weakly. "I'm just tired of people thinking quiet means weak." She nodded. "Well, they messed with the wrong one." Back at the apartment, a package was waiting for me. No name, no return label. Inside, a burner phone, turned off, blank screen, no instructions. My pulse kicked into overdrive. Was it from Jen Harvest? Jason? A scare tactic? Or something else? Harold urged caution. "Don't turn it on. I'll have a tech guy sweep it." "We're past legal," I murmured. "We're in something else now." He nodded grimly. "This is what happens when people realize they can't buy you. They try to erase you instead." The next morning, Rachel uploaded a new video. It was titled, "When Family Turns Toxic, Setting Boundaries Without Guilt." The thumbnail was her looking tearfully into the camera, a soft piano playing behind her voiceover. "I've had to walk away from people I love," she said, "not because I hate them, but because they refuse to grow." I stared at the screen in disbelief. No mention of coercing a dying man, no apology, just curated victimhood. "She's building a fallback brand," Harold said, watching over my shoulder. "If the land fails, she'll monetize the fallout." "She's turning her betrayal into content," I whispered, "and she thinks she's winning." That night, as the sun dipped behind the orchard hills, I sat alone on my balcony, holding the original deed in my lap. They had signatures. I had truth. They had followers. I had land. They had a camera. But I had the recording now. And soon, so would the court. If you've ever had your truth twisted into someone else's story, type 3. You are not alone, and you are not crazy. I was slicing strawberries for the Saturday community bake sale when the knock came. 3 hard wraps, sharp and unannounced. I opened the door to find a process server holding a yellow envelope and a clipboard. "Nora Bennett?" he asked. "Yes." "You've been served." He handed me the papers and walked off without another word. I unfolded the documents. Jason was suing me. The bold header read, "Motion to compel sale of shared property." The argument? That I was deliberately obstructing the rightful beneficiaries of the estate and causing material loss through refusal to cooperate. Below that, Rachel's signature appeared as co-plaintiff. A final line burned, "Defendant is not acting in the family's best interest." I stood there, the strawberries bleeding red onto the cutting board behind me. For a moment, I could hardly breathe. Then I whispered, "They want war? They'll get the full harvest." In the courtroom on Monday, sunlight spilled through stained glass windows, casting fractured colors on the polished wooden benches. It looked more like a chapel than a place of reckoning, which felt ironic. Harold sat beside me at the defense table, calm as ever. He slid a file across the polished oak surface. "We'll start with the video," he said, "and the deed, and the will that Jason tried to bury." "Let's make sure they know," I replied, "that legacy is not for sale." At the other table, Jason wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my entire apartment's annual rent. Rachel looked like a socialite influencer playing courtroom cosplay. Soft blush, designer bag, and an expression just pained enough for sympathy. Judge Emerson, a woman in her 60s with keen gray eyes, took the bench. The hearing began. Jason's attorney opened with a familiar script: aging parent, sentimental attachment, unreasonable resistance, fair market value. "She is preventing the modernization of outdated farmland," the lawyer said, despite both children being legal heirs. Then Harold stood. "Your Honor," he said evenly, "I present evidence that the will in question is not only forged, but that Mr. Bennett was filmed under morphine while coerced to sign a document he clearly did not understand." The courtroom murmured. Harold plugged in the USB. The screen lit up. Tom's gaunt face, Jason's voice, the pen, the blink of the red recording light. The moment Tom hesitated and asked, "Didn't Harold already do all this?" Silence fell like snowfall. Rachel shifted. Jason looked down. Then came the kicker. Harold laid out the original deed, land in my name, untouched, carrying exclusive water rights. A certified copy, notarized, predating the marriage. It was uncontestable. "Without this land," Harold concluded, "there is no viable development, there is no orchard, and there is no inheritance to steal." Judge Emerson didn't blink. "Motion to compel is denied pending further investigation. Injunction remains in place." Jason's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is delaying closure." "No," she said sharply. "This is ensuring justice." Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting now. Local news had picked up the case as a human interest piece. The headlines were brutal. "Elder widow battles children over family farm." "Signature scandal rocks, organic orchard sale." "Influencer accused of filming dying father for estate power grab." Rachel's podcast sponsors dropped her within 48 hours. Jason's former firm issued a public statement distancing themselves, quietly confirming an ethical breach from his past employment. Harold received a cease and desist from Jen Harvest's lawyers, who now claimed they'd been misled by third-party stakeholders. I wasn't naive. This wasn't over. But momentum had shifted. A week later, Rachel called me directly, no blocked number this time. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "can we just talk? Please?" I didn't answer. She kept going. "I made mistakes. Jason pressured me. He said you'd be okay, that you'd sign. I didn't know it would go this far." "You recorded your father," I said quietly. "Not for love, for leverage." A pause. "I wanted a future," she said. "So did he," I replied. "But you buried his before his body was even cold." Click. I never answered again. I met with Harold that Friday in his office. The window overlooked Main Street, where people passed with dogs and donuts and life. We sat side by side, not across from each other. That felt important. "I'm setting up a trust," I said. I want the land protected, forever, for Hazel Ridge Agricultural Co-op. He nodded. We'll draw it up. No one can touch it without breaching federal water rights. Let them try, I said. Let them see how deep these roots go. Later that month, I stood by the orchard fence. The trees were blooming. Bees buzzed softly around the blossoms. A new generation of students from the high school had started volunteering, planting herbs, repairing irrigation lines, learning about sustainability. One girl, probably 16, held up a clipboard. Mrs. Bennett, do we prune these rows next? I smiled. We prune with patience and purpose. She nodded seriously, like I'd handed her a secret. That night, I received one last message from Jason. You won. Hope it was worth it. I didn't reply, but I did write back. Not to him, but to everyone who'd ever stood in soil they were told wasn't theirs. To those dismissed as too soft, too quiet, too sentimental to fight. If you've ever been underestimated for being calm or dismissed for being kind, type 4. Quiet strength changes everything.